Please welcome Martin Barkman.
Welcome. Welcome to a new era of the supply chain. For the past 2 years, the risks and shortfalls in our global supply chain have been front and center, everywhere from family rooms to corporate boardrooms and even to the briefing rooms of heads of state. Supply chains are constantly in the headlines, but the stories we hear are not all that pleasant. Remember the empty grocery store shelves when we thought we were going to run out of toilet paper? Or manufacturing plants having to be brought to a halt because employees are either on lockdown or home sick? Or inventory being stuck at sea and not able to make it in time for the Christmas holiday season? Or ships being stuck because they cannot pass through the Suez Canal? What makes matters even more complicated is that supply chains are now more than networked than ever before. So the slightest disruption can have a huge ripple effect. Take the semiconductor industry. By itself, it's about 1%, a little less than 1% of US output. But semiconductors go into goods that represent 12% of US output. So again, one change can really impact the economic situation. So this list of news is endless, and clearly it shows that supply chains can be a vulnerability, but they can also be a source of strength. Over the longer term, actually supply chain stories are not that negative. The truth is that supply chains have been critical to shaping businesses, to even shaping parts of human history. Countries and corporations have evolved and at times thrived in expected and unexpected ways in pursuit of that perfect supply chain. Supply chains are now recognized as central to business survival and growth, rather than just an afterthought of what's needed to make, design, and ship a product. So in today's discussion, let's explore what makes companies survive and thrive in this environment, and let's not regurgitate all these negative stories. At SAP, we have a unique perspective in that we've been working with companies' supply chains for 50 years. And here today, or tomorrow and the next day, we have lots of customers that are excited to share their supply chain story with you. Companies like Merck, Enable Injections, and Airbus can talk about how they've begun to digitalize their platforms for planning and manufacturing and thus made supply chains much better. So let's get started and dive into and take a look at how businesses are thriving in today's day and age. We've learned a lot over the last 2 years. The biggest lesson is that the unthinkable really can happen. We were hit with a once-in-a-generation pandemic, which definitely affected supply chains. But let's not forget, supply chains were already facing lots of challenges. Think about things like global trade tariffs, or natural disasters, or even an ever-evolving geopolitical landscape. These were challenging times for supply chains. But a few companies, many companies that were forward-leaning, were actually investing. They were investing in digitalizing their operations and enabling new efficiencies for people and processes. Companies like Schwarz Group and Smart Press Shop have great stories to tell. So that begs the question, what are the innovators doing in supply chain to stay alive and thrive? Disruptions are going to happen. You can respond reactively or in a resilient fashion. And by resilient, let's be clear what we mean. It means that you can absorb a shock and somehow return to the original state, maybe even to a better state. That's resilience. Digitalized businesses, they don't just react and in brute force ways, which can be very costly and complicated and take a long time to implement. digitalized companies anticipate and adapt ahead of these disruptions, and they have a better way and a higher chance of being more resilient as a result. Take the Timken company as an example, a manufacturer of bearings and power transmission products in something like 42 countries. To counter the uncertainty and volatility of demand and supply, Timken utilized SAP integrated business planning in a pilot of one plant per region, thereby taking the first steps in enabling a digitalization and a supply chain transformation, leveraging cloud solutions. So what are some other examples that companies do in order to become more digitalized? Let's say you have your bill of material, your product bill of material, and there's an issue with one of the components. Can't be sourced, can't be found. When these types of urgent design requirements arise, instead of reacting with a knee-jerk response, why not have a platform, a collaborative platform, where you can design the new solution and come up with the right digital model of your product and then put that in action in manufacturing? When supply is disrupted, instead of reacting with a bunch of redundant and costly suppliers, why not anticipate these issues and rely upon a network of suppliers to fill that gap without increasing the costs of your product? When there's a change in demand, a spike in demand, or a different product mix is required for companies, and at the same time you're trying to balance your capacity, why rely on mountains of spreadsheets and trying to bring them together and people handing them off? I mean, using each other's spreadsheets can be quite uncomfortable. Why not instead have a digitalized platform where you bring all of this information in together in one environment, and then you can quickly iterate and come up with the right plan, but more importantly, put that plan into action and then adjust it as needed? When inventory shortages pop up, why randomly introduce all kinds of safety stock throughout the supply chain? That ties up cash that you could use for other parts of your business. Why not instead look at the information, look at the data that's there, run some sophisticated algorithms and figure out maybe there is some need for safety stock, but let's put it where it's really needed, and then as conditions change, rerun that optimization. When shipping challenges arise, why not quickly tap into and work with networks of transportation providers? When assets break down in your supply chain, because after all, there's all kinds of assets in manufacturing and distribution throughout the supply chain, why do reactive, delay-inducing maintenance? Why not avoid the breakdown altogether by putting sensors throughout the equipment, remotely monitoring what those sensors are saying, vibration analysis, temperature analysis, and then do proactive maintenance, either with your own people or more elegantly through verified service networks with whom you can collaborate? All of these are examples of digitalization, where companies are using vast amounts of data, information, analytics, and technology platforms, bringing that together. This digitalization of supply chain and operations handles disruptions better, faster, in a less complicated and a less costly way. So let's talk about some more examples of what we mean by this. Supply chains as we know them today are unlikely to exist forever, and in some cases they won't exist at all. Supply chains will change. The pandemic demonstrated how how market conditions can change in an extreme and unimaginable way. And for manufacturing companies, it became increasingly apparent that the supply chain is actually the most vulnerable part of their business. So what did they do about that, though? Well, it came down to, in many cases, intelligent data. We've been collecting data for quite some time, and when mountains of this data is combined with the latest technologies around smart analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, then all of a sudden amazing things can start to happen. Because every part of your supply chain starts to know what other parts of the supply chain are doing. This starts to break down and slowly erase some of the functional silos that can exist even within the end-to-end supply chain. There's some other great examples of customers doing this that I want to highlight here. Take the mining company Freeport-McMoRan. Mining has a huge element of asset maintenance, right? Because to do mining, you need lots of expensive assets. And historically, the maintenance of that assets, it's done by the employees of the mining company, but it takes time, it takes people, and in many cases, these processes are completely manual. Freeport-McMoRan leveraged the SAP Service and Asset Manager mobile application and moved all that workflow into a digitalized way, which allowed them to do the maintenance faster, better, and also with, in the end, fewer people. Companies like Spartan Controls and Patterson, their business is selling equipment and then servicing that equipment for their customers. They send out technicians to do that, and those technicians have to figure out what's the optimal way to divide and conquer the day. Both of these companies utilized SAP Field Service Management to plan that whole day, the day of the technicians, much, much better. So they improved their utilization, they increased their customer service, and they also reduced the carbon footprint, because in the end, they were able to put the technicians on the road in fewer miles driven. Then there's companies like Bechtel. Bechtel is an IT service house, and Bechtel utilized SAP Extended Warehouse Management and Warehouse Robotics in order to build in more flexibility and really streamline their entire warehouse management process. So those are just some of the examples. So what does it mean for supply chains? What does it mean for us here today? It is time to modernize, or risk becoming fossilized. Throughout history, we see interesting patterns with technology. Something comes along and then it gets incrementally improved. Maybe the technology gets made smaller, maybe it becomes faster, and then all of a sudden, boom, a game-changing opportunity or technology comes along. We believe we are at that moment today with supply chains. Supply chains are facing a massive opportunity, and it's up to us to take advantage of it. We've been collecting all this data for quite some time, but now we can allow machine learning algorithms to look at that information, make better decisions, and as the information changes over time, learn and become increasingly more and more powerful. We can put the data in the cloud so that it can be accessible more easily from multiple angles. We can create world-class analytics that can allow that data to sing and dance. We are facing right now a perfect storm of opportunity where once and for all we can make supply chains truly digitalized. And what you end up then with is quite interesting. You essentially get a digital twin or a digital mirror of your real-world supply chain. Why is that cool? Well, the information is fed from the real-world supply chain into the digital twin. Then you can analyze and simulate. You can also control the real-world supply chain through that digital twin, so they become connected, entangled, if you will. That's super exciting. So imagine you sell products to your customers. Imagine if those products are broadcasting real-time performance back to your design teams. Imagine if your product planners have visibility into worldwide inventory throughout the entire networked supply chain beyond the four walls of your business, and the subsequent delivery options that are available. Imagine logistics managers being able to divert and reroute in real time to ensure perfect delivery. Imagine machinery that alerts you ahead of time. Hey, I'm about to break down, you may want to pay attention. And then being able to stratify and classify different types of assets in your supply chain and have the right maintenance strategy for each one. Imagine a manufacturing environment that can digitally, automatically adjust itself, right? When new demand comes along or a customer comes with something that's much more specific, the plant can adjust and make that product on the fly. Imagine being able to do that type of manufacturing closer to demand and not always try to put the plant on the opposite end of the earth where supposedly the cost of manufacturing is at its lowest point. It's an ambitious plan to modernize any business, and a company that is a great example of this is Molson Coors Beverage Company. This company embarked upon a journey together with SAP and one of our partners, EY, to look at improving warehouse management operations, streamlining manufacturing, and also really thinking about automation in the warehouse a different way. So in the end, we here can create a living, breathing, real-time, data-driven supply chain that becomes the epicenter of your business, back to the era of the supply chain, if you will. Technology and real-time intelligent data is the lever that we can pull. It is now the new tipping point for all of us. Some companies will rise to the challenge and become new leaders and the new pioneers. It is time to modernize or risk being fossilized. So how do we deliver on these needs? Where do we start? What can we do now? Let me offer just a framework and a point of view. First and foremost, let's understand the elements of what constitutes the entire supply chain. It actually begins when products are designed, and then you have to think about how to plan, how to manufacture a product, how to deliver, right? Transportation, warehousing, and then how to operate and service the assets in that supply chain. That's a closed loop. And those circles are related, as shown in the graphic. For example, if an asset's about to break down and you need to do proactive maintenance, you should incorporate that into the plan that you devise. If you're having production challenges, the question is that a problem with the manufacturing line, or maybe it was a design flaw? As you're making delivery decisions, you're trying to optimize for really meeting that order delivery, that customer service promise to the customer. The decisions you make there may result in the fact that you should replan. So just connecting these digitally can be very, very powerful. Once you've done that and begun that journey, now you can do some interesting things. For example, you can truly run synchronized planning company-wide, which is when you're integrating customer input, demand signals, aspirations from finance, sales, marketing, if you will, realities around service and logistics, and all of that is tied together so that you have not just a good high-level plan, but you have a plan that you can put into action and actually see come to fruition. Second, you can reinvent production and services. Up until now, the way you reduced cost in manufacturing in large part was through efficiency-based programs and trying to squeeze more productivity, sometimes by just attaining economies of scale. Can you do more of that? I'm sure you can. But let's face it, if we leverage digitalized platforms and we create manufacturing environments with intelligent assets, people, factories, and processes, and we apply Industry 4.0 best practices, we can create a manufacturing plant that can simultaneously make the products exactly the way customers want them without necessarily incurring more cost. We can create that flexibility with productivity. We can have our cake and eat it too. Then there's the topic of sustainability. It's inconceivable to us that a company could feel good about its path to sustainability without explicitly looking at the role that the supply chain plays. And we think it starts with a couple of pretty straightforward things. One is embedding ethical sourcing in how you design and create your products. And then you couple that with best practices in how you manufacture, plan, and transport. You can thereby improve and contribute towards having a more circular economy, and at the same time reduce the carbon footprint and waste simply by doing things better. Remember I talked earlier about inventory? If you can reduce the amount of inventory that's sitting in your supply chain, you have positively affected sustainability because you have less chance of obsolescence and waste, and you didn't spend a bunch of energy creating inventory that you ultimately didn't need. And then last, with this type of design to operate framework, you can connect that into the various business partners, into the various trading partners, and start to have end-to-end visibility, better collaboration, and transacting those partners in a more digitalized way. So clearly, we can't do this alone. We need to work together, and together with our partners make this happen. An example of a partner with whom SAP has worked is NTT. We forged a partnership in December of 2020 to co-innovate on a product that helps transportation companies who are ensuring freight from point of origin to point of delivery every step of the way. I would encourage all of you to learn about our success stories and hear more from our customers that are here and meet with our partners. We have a great show floor showcase over there. You saw Julia White earlier, live from the showcase a little bit. Now I would like to thank you and also play a video about the NTT SAP partnership. Thank you very much.
At the end of 2020, SAP and NTT announced a strategic alliance. In this holistic partnership, we both serve as each other's customers, suppliers, and co-innovators. Since then, we have been collaborating in every aspect. Especially in the area of co-innovation, we worked with NTT to make our world more connected and sustainable. Volatile markets, geopolitical tensions, shortage of materials, and climate change lead to increasingly complex value chains. Our connected product brings together the best of NTT's and SAP's intelligent technology. It provides transparency and traceability throughout the transportation process across the entire value chain. This is how we reimagine the way companies transform their business, not only within their company, but across their networks of trading partners. Together, we help companies around the globe to be more resilient and more agile. We are very much looking forward to further advancing our partnership with NTT.
Thank you, Christian. NTT and SAP announced a strategic alliance in 2020. Our shared vision is to create a new era of digitally connected value chain solutions. We support a smart and sustainable world by combining SAP's intelligent technologies with NTT's connected services. Today, pandemic, war, and climate change cause logistics and supply chain disruptions across the globe. Marine transportation is one of the most affected areas in the global supply chain model. In some cases, products were not tracked for 3 months and found out to be damaged or lost in transit. These losses result in more than $5 billion in insurance claims. In order to solve these challenges, we have worked together to co-innovate the tangible result through the alliance. I'm happy to present Connected Product with NTT Smart Shipment Solution and SAP Logistics Business Network. The solution delivers real-time monitoring and tracking of global shipments with matching insurance coverage. This will improve the efficiency of the global supply chain to create better business results and contribute to a more sustainable society. Let me share a video showing the solution in action.
Global value chain volumes are growing every day, increasing the complexity. Losses due to poor transportation conditions is becoming a multi-billion-dollar problem because it is almost impossible to know who did what and when an incident was caused. NTT and SAP have signed a strategic alliance to create a new era of digitally connected global value chains and to deliver solutions to support a remote and connected world. We are starting with companies that ship fragile goods like solar panels, which require special transportation conditions in terms of impacts and light, and insurance against possible incidents. More than 70% of supply chain claims are due to breakages, and until the cargo arrives at its destination, nobody has any idea of its actual condition and if it is suitable for sale to end customers. This lack of visibility prevents companies from taking proactive decisions to avoid significant contractual penalties by setting accountability for each stakeholder to make insurance management easier. SAP and NTT Data have developed a solution based on connecting SAP Business Network for Logistics with smart insurance policy management assets powered by NTT Data. This provides real-time information on operations to all stakeholders, digitizing all shipment and insurance documentation, triggering and executing insurance policies automatically through NTT Data's smart shipments, and giving everyone the ability to adapt to potential incidents quickly. The solution starts when goods are loaded in the container. A sensor is installed and linked to the logistics order shipment and the smart shipment policy. The sensor collects data and sends its geolocation and transportation conditions every hour. Alongside marine transportation of the goods, the solution, developed by NTT Data and SAP, monitors all variables that could affect the cargo. All this real-time data gathered remotely facilitates automatic decision-making provided by NTT Data's smart shipments that optimizes insurance-related processes significantly and assures all stakeholders across the supply chain that everything is in hand, no matter what happens. Meanwhile, all stakeholders across the supply chain can follow the order conditions using dynamic dashboards showing insurance policy coverage and impact with light, medium or heavy categories to anticipate potential breaches. If the transport conditions defined in the policy are breached during the shipment of the goods, the NTT Data Smart Insurance Policy is triggered and executes the payment of the insurance policy, reducing claim management overheads and general costs. Between March and August, 20 shippers will be tracking 400 live shipments delivered in Europe, Asia and America, monitoring more than 5 million kilometers and collecting more than 200,000 pieces of data from the sensors. SAP and NTT, an alliance to transform business operations.